Yeah, crazy realization when it comes to bloodlines and lineages. When we look back to history, the way bloodlines stayed clean was to basically, keep it in the family and do what we do, or, to populate our communities, to build nations is by basically incest and shit like that, right? But nobody speaks on the long-term trauma that occurs, right? But they were conditioned into believing that that was the thing to do. But now we've woken up and seen that a lot of things just wasn't the right things to do. We got to understand that we are still dealing with the trauma centuries later, right? Because it created, um, outside of the incest, it created pedophiles, it created a lot of child molesters, it created a lot of things where a lot of things nowadays just ain't cool, it ain't clean, it ain't just some, it's some real shit that be going on when it comes to people's minds. But we gotta understand, breaking it all down and tracing it back to when all this shit began. They came flying on stage with tights on, and the tutus and wearing the wigs, playing both roles in order to confuse you, right? So all in all, we are all dealing with trauma from centuries ago that's still going through our bloodline, right? Because we're still dealing with entities that basically been carried on throughout our bloodlines and throughout the lineages that we're just now placing and naming, what they are, what we are understanding of what this feeling is and where it came from. Therefore, becoming more and more intelligent when it comes to our emotions. We are maturing when it comes to our emotions. We're really understanding what our emotions are and where they come from, where they're stemming from. Therefore, we can cut down to the root of the shit and either dig it out or basically, nourish it to grow it stronger. But all in all is to really figure out that to get to the nitty gritty of what our initial trauma is. It's not just from what we are indoctrinated into. It's stemming from a long time ago, before they came on stage. It's been us against us, but in a way where it is us to choose for us to break away from what we've all been embedded into, really, because we're all here now realizing and noticing and taking accountability for it's not even our responsibility, but we got to take a piece of responsibility and claim it as our own to know that we have shit, a good of us have learned that a good amount of the trauma really wasn't ours. We was just the face of a lot of motherfuckers that wanted to traumatize us. But to know, understand that that shit started from way back when because it created a lot of motherfucking monsters that we're dealing with now. But it does open doors on how it alleviates the way that the future will have to deal with the monsters that we're dealing with nowadays, right? But overall, it's pinpointing the issue of what emotions are and where the feelings go when it comes to knowing where shit began, y'all. And it began a long time ago. Hey, I gotta put y'all on live at the same time. But man, I always speak in you. Who said something bad? Learn not the way of the heathen. Who the heathen know? You or me? Because I'm speaking something that's right for me. The hell? Internet is wild when you sit up there and go live. They really be coming up with some stuff. It's hi. I was speaking on lineages and the trauma that we yo, damn, the goons and the goblins and the monsters that we're dealing with now is just it's been there. We're just like naming them and we can place them. We know what the entities are and we can actually pinpoint where it began and it began us. Us in a way where it keeps this shit is crazy because nowadays it is the same thing. It's like groups of what people are conditioned to pre-programmed into being like those groups and Like, yeah, just groups and shit, different types of groups, different organizations, different entities and shit that make up of people, right? That believe in one thing or another in one way or another to either grow or to keep still or support, right? Back then, it was the same thing. It was to keep everything in the bloodline. It was to keep everything tight and clean, but it created a lot of fuckers. You know, it created a lot of motherfucking shit that nowadays it is very impure and unclean when you come to think of, what was done in order to keep the bloodline clean. The trauma began back then. We're just now dealing with it now because now we can place it. Because the same thing was just basically repeat, rewind, and recycling the same bullshit throughout every timeline. Therefore, the mixing and the matching of humans was to occur in order to further confuse the minds of those that are roaming the earth to not only populate the earth, but to know themselves. Damn, I will have to bring this back again to another conversation because that toils into the studies that we've all indoctrinated into. Because where does that actually fit into the scheme of all things, if not to just confuse this altogether? Fuck. Anyways, y'all. When you put all the stories together, no, when you put the story together without the indoctrinated story of what history really is, the bloodline became unpure when they came flying on stage because the impurity of how they saw what our tradition and customs were, and they made religion out of it. I have to make that a whole nother aspect of a story. No, the most I got you. Have a good one. Bye.